Yo, what is good, YouTube? It's your boy JImmygotsoul back with another video. This video here, I'm going to talk about some of my handheld games that I have in my collection. Some of these games do have the prices that I paid for them at the particular time that I got them. So some of these you may be surprised, some of them you may not be surprised with. But until further ado, let's get into the video. Alright, so the original Game Boy is one of my favorite handhelds I've had as a kid. I remember my mother going to go buy my first Game Boy for $42 that came with Tetris back in the 90s. I played that thing forever, but back then you had one game that you could only play, so you were kind of just stuck with that one game. But as I started to get more games, started trading games, I started to build up my collection a little bit. So some of the games that I do have here, first one here is going to be Bases Loaded. Now this one is the baseball game that is quite similar to the NES style version of the game. It actually pretty much plays the same. It's just a way of having this game in a portable form. So to have Bases Loaded, if you liked it for the NES, or if you played Super Bases Loaded and you were able to travel and actually play the game, it's a lot of fun there. My second game, I'm going to go with another baseball game, is we're going to go with Ken Griffey Jr. Now, if you know anything about the Ken Griffey Jr. Super Nintendo games, these games were great. It was another way of having a portable version of these games, but Ken Griffey Winning Run, I played that game a whole lot. It was kind of similar to Bases Loaded, but if you have never played them, which I doubt you haven't, go play them. They also have some of the Ken Griffey Jr. games for the 64, so these games were synonymous with the Nintendo generation between the Super Nintendo, the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and the N64. Next, we're going to go to a fighting game. You either have this in your collection or you've had it at some period of time, whether it's for the Game Boy, whether it's for the Super Nintendo, whether you just got it for the PS5, the newest edition that came out, 64, Sega Genesis, Street Fighter 2. There's enough versions of Street Fighter out that I highly doubt that you have not played this game before. Street Fighter 2 for the Game Boy was extremely fun because, again, this was a game that you had in a portable form. It's the same one like the Super Nintendo version of the game. It has the same characters in there. You go through story mode like usual. You still can pull off the same moves as the Super Nintendo version. The only difference is this is not in color. This is one of my original ones that I've had for a long time. I'm pretty sure it's probably worth 25, 30 bucks now at the moment. But if you're living on the rock for the last 35 years and you haven't played it, get it. Street Fighter 2. The next game, I'm going to go with another fighting game, which is a boxing game. You may not be familiar with this particular one, but if you have not played it, I will strongly suggest it. It's a 10 out of a 10 game. It's boxing. This game was ahead of its time. If you have played it, then you know. If you know, you know. But I'll insert some gameplay footage here. This game is, man, I cannot brag enough about this game. I got this game on a limb one time as a kid, and I've never put it down since. As a kid, this was like a tough game. It's more one of those rhythmic games, sort of like Punch Out, but for the graphics for a Game Boy game back in the early 90s, you cannot get no better than this. So if you have not played it, it's strictly just called boxing. If you have not played it, I strongly suggest going to seek this game out, where you can find it online or if you can find it in the stores. Go pick this game up. play this game. You will have a ton of fun. I recommend it. You would not be disappointed. Next game, another classic game that you probably played it already, or you may not. But I know that with the new collection that came out, that this game is on that collection. So you can play it for the next gen consoles, for the Switch, for the Series X, and for the PS5, PS4. And that is Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan. This game is probably 45 minutes tops, but I cannot tell you how many times that I've actually played this game. I've beaten this game. I played it recently when I got it for the PS5. It's still fun. If you are a fan of the Turtles, you will like this game. If you are a fan of the Turtles, I'm pretty sure you've played this game before. You know what it's about. It's a Turtles game. What more do I need to say about a Turtles game? Especially having it portable, handheld. This is before the Vitas and your Switches and things like that. Having a portable Turtles game in the 90s was chef's kiss. Next game I'm gonna go with is a racing game. This game is a little difficult, not a little difficult, a lot difficult. And that one is F1 Race. This is another game that I kind of got on the limb, that I spent with my hard-earned money, my allowance money as a kid. I picked this up, so I kind of have an attachment to this game. I remember buying this game, getting another copy, having the multi-tap with the Game Boy, and playing this with my friend. This was probably like one of the first games I was able to use like a multi-tap, and getting two Game Boys together and two of the same games together and playing it. But this game is extremely difficult for your Game Boy enthusiasts. If you played this game, you know how difficult this game is, how many times you end up crashing within one race. This game is hard. Even as an adult, I still struggle to play this game, but because I bought this with my own money and it was something that I did for myself, I have an attachment to this game. So this game is pretty cool. It's pretty difficult. As you know, if you were a kid in the 90s, that Nintendo games and Game Boy games were brutal. They're nothing like they are now. They show literally no mercy. There was no continuations, no nothing. You would just hear, you can get as close as to the end as possible of a game, of a race, and you will be starting completely over. So again, if you're from the 90s or if you're the 80s kid, if you know, you know. All right, I'm going to go with another fighting game that I've had in my collection that is pretty fun. I'm pretty sure everyone has already played this. This is a game very popular in the 90s. I'm not sure if you knew if they had a Game Boy version of the game, but it is no other than Now, Killer Instinct, as you already know, was something that tried to rival Mortal Kombat. You were either a Mortal Kombat kid or a Killer Instinct kid. I was both. Both the games were great to me. Mortal Kombat 2 is probably my favorite out of Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3. But to see Killer Instinct for the Super Nintendo with the black cartridge was game-changing. That you didn't see games that were that color, nor did you see games that perform like that with the combos, the ultra combos. To learn them, some of them were easy, some of them were difficult, but to be able to have a portable copy of this game again is fun. I actually just picked this back up not that long ago because I lost my original copy and I wanted to get my copy of this game back so I can enjoy the fun not only with the Super Nintendo version of it, but the Game Boy version of it. Now there's also the Xbox version, which is pretty good, that I like too. Those for the Xbox One, I think came back out in like 2013, 2014. And that version did have Killer Instinct 1, Killer Instinct 2. Now, I didn't get much into Killer Instinct Gold or the 64 versions of it. I'm not too fond of those, which I was into different other games at that particular time. but I'm pretty sure those games are just as good as these games. But for Killer Instinct, you cannot go wrong. I don't think this game is even that much, maybe 20 bucks tops. But if you've been living under the rock again for the last 20-30 years and you never played Killer Instinct, go get it. This copy is a good copy. Also go get the Super Nintendo copy as well too. Alright, so you know I cannot go through a game collection without having a wrestling game in my collection, which I have multiple ones. As you can see here, this is King of the Ring I got for $1.99, but this is not what I'm talking about. This particular game is WWF Superstars. Now, what made this game so appealing to me is that you had you had the Macho Man, and Ultimate Warrior. There was not too many games that Ultimate Warrior was actually in that you got to play with. Ultimate Warrior is one of my favorite wrestlers back in the 90s as a kid, so this was an automatic buy for me. Now, if this game any good, that's up for debate. You only got a couple moves because you are dealing with the limited system, which is the Game Boy. So I enjoyed this game because it was another game that I bought with my own allowance that I saved up. So it's fun to me. There's also Superstars 2 that has the Undertaker in there. They have some other people like the Mountie, who cares about him? But Hulk Hogan and Macho Man are in that game as well too. Very similar, not much of a difference, but like I said, when you're dealing with the Game Boy, not all the games are good. But as a wrestling game, to be able to play this game in the car on a road trip, you can't beat it. I know if some of you guys have had a Game Boy in the past, you knew the struggles of not being able to play in the dark. I remember taking road trips where we were leaving at nighttime, and if you can get a little bit of 2 seconds of the game from a street light driving past, you were golden. But having a light, I tried having a flashlight on it. It didn't work as well. That was the only downside to the Game Boy, is that there was no color. The screen was not that great, but you know, those were the struggles as a kid. You had to do what you had to do. We didn't have Vitas and Switches and Game Boy Advances and Game Boy Colors at that particular time, or even a Game Gear, or even, you know, a Sonic game for the Game Gear. But you did what you had to do. Like I said, even though some of these games are not that great, some of them are. So my next game that I'm gonna go with is Donkey Kong Land. So just like Killer Instinct, Donkey Kong Land was a different color cartridge, which made it stand out in the collection. This game, Donkey Kong, it's just like Donkey Kong Land, Super Donkey Kong 1 and 2, 3 for Super Nintendo. It was just in a portable form, but to be able to have a yellow cartridge, you know, it made it stand out. Donkey Kong games are extremely difficult. They still are. They show no mercy. Even the Tropical Freeze for the Wii U and for the Switch, which is the same game, those games are hard. They're challenging, they're fun to get through, but they're not easy. But to be able to have a yellow cartridge, or if you got a buddy of yours that say, hey, what's that game right there? You can tell them it's Donkey Kong. But this is another game that's in my collection that I still do play from time to time. Now, this was not one that I got when I was young. I mostly had the Super Nintendo versions of the game, so I got this one a little later on, probably around the Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color era when I got this one. So yeah, this one sticks out because it was definitely a different color. Now, it's only right that if you have a Nintendo system video or anything, how can you not include Mario? Now this one here is Super Mario Land. Yeah, this is a fake copy with a different color cartridge. I don't care, it plays the same to me. I'm not trying to sell it, I just wanted to play the game. Now this I did have as a kid. This was one that I did play through. To be able to have a platformer like Super Mario handheld to be able to take on and go with you was amazing at the time. You couldn't beat it. The game is good to me. I'm not sure how you guys feel about the game, but you had Super Mario Land, Super Mario Land 2, I think it was Land of the 6 Coins or something like that. I can't remember if you can play this on the Switch. I think you can with the Game Boy app on the Switch, that these games are on there. So you can play these in color. Also, if you do have a Game Boy SP that switches over to color, or a Game Boy Color, you can play these games in color. So if you did have a problem with how the screen looked, you can still play these games in color. Some of these games still look great. These games are cool. For it to be set in like Egyptian time and there was Egyptian themes on it, I thought was pretty cool at the time too, because you still had Mario. Around this time, Super Mario World was out for the Super Nintendo, which I think is the greatest game of all time. That's for another discussion. But if you haven't played Super Mario Land, either buy the game, or you can be like me and buy a counterfeit copy, or you can go on the Nintendo Switch and sign up for the Game Boy Online Play, and it should be on there. Alright guys, so that was part 1 of my collection of my Game Boy games. As you would know, I do have more. I have a ton of games still left to show you. So we might make this a part 2, part 3 version of it. If you stay to the end, man, I appreciate you. If you can, throw up a like, comment. You know what you can also do? You can subscribe. You know, it don't cost you nothing. But until then, it's your boy JImmygotsoul. We out. Peace.